Since the start of the Rojava revolution, the United States and its ally Turkey, with the backing of Kurdistan Democratic Party, are influencing the Rojava revolution in different ways. To get more insight in these policies, the resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, Rubin, will join us now live from Washington. We are very pleased to have you, Mr. Rubin, on Ronahî. Before discussing United States, Turkey and KDP policies on Rojava, let me first ask you about Nowruz celebrations of yesterday. On this occasion, the Kurdish leader Öcalan issued a statement in which he again insists on a democratic solution to the Kurdish issue. What is your view on his message?
Well, Öcalan arguing that there should be a democratic solution to the Kurdish issue is like saying the world should drown. It's common sense to absolutely everyone, except perhaps some of those in the Turkish government, the Iranian government, the Syrian government, and so forth. It really is common sense, and it is a welcome statement that advances the peace process.
You are closely, Mr. Rubin, following the developments in Rojava. What is your evaluation of people's choice in Rojava to be neutral, which eventually led to the establishment of the democratic self-rule administrations?
Well, ultimately, the only view that matters are the view of the residents of Rojava. It makes perfect sense to be neutral, because after all, you have to fight your enemies one at a time, and the greater threat right now comes from the al-Qaeda-linked groups that are supported by Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, and so forth. If the Syrian government is willing to have a truce, if they're willing to lay down their arms, and if they're willing ultimately to allow some degree of federalism and the autonomy of the cantons, then there's absolutely no reason to fight. Remember, even though you have some Syrian government forces that are in Qamishli, for example, many of them are conscripts. And they have brothers, they have fathers, they have uncles who are conscripted into the Syrian army in areas under Syrian government control. If they were ordered to fight, they would have two choices. They could either fight to the death and Rojava, the YPG would be able to defeat them, or they would end up laying down their arms and their family members would be retaliated against, backed by Bashar al-Assad. So the humanitarian decision is what is actually going on now.
States, what is U.S. stance towards the emergence of Rojava's democratic model in the Middle East? And maybe in order to understand this, we need to know more about how the U.S. is dealing and will deal in the future with the Middle East.
Well, let me say I'm disappointed by the American stance to Rojava. I would hope that the American stance towards Rojava would be much more forthcoming, especially after the lesson of how federalism in Iraq and Iraqi Kurdistan has created a partner for the United States as well. But now, speaking as an analyst rather than an advocate, what the American position is this. The Americans are not supporting Rojava at this point in time because they are disappointed with the truce with the Assad regime and because they don't think that Rojava is fitting in well to the major opposition umbrella. Now, what the American government doesn't understand is that the major opposition umbrella doesn't really represent Syrians on the ground, whether they're Arabs, Kurds, Syriac, or others. That really, the people that have the popular legitimacy are the Kurds in Rojava and the other residents of Rojava. At the same time, the Americans need to understand that as angry as they are at Bashar al-Assad's regime, so long as the Kurds of Rojava have federalism and autonomy, then it's they who are making the decisions and not Bashar al-Assad back in Damascus. And the last thing I would point out is the Americans really should learn the lesson, because after all, in Iraqi Kurdistan, both the Kurdistan Democratic Party of Masoud Barzani and the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan of Jalal Talabani had long and deep links to Saddam Hussein up until and perhaps even past 2003. It's just the way that one needs to interact in the Middle East, where you have to have links both to friends and to enemies.
What kind of role is Turkey playing in determining these U.S. policies towards Rojava?
Turkey is playing a rather malicious role. First of all, make no mistake, Turkey is the major channel through which al-Qaeda is now operating. almost every international takfiri or jihadi who enters Syria is entering through Turkey. And if Turkey wanted to close its borders, it could. Major international networks like CNN have documented jihadis and takfiris paying Turkish soldiers bribes of usually $40 in order to cross into Syria. Now, that said, America and Turkey have had long established links, and those links have created diplomatic representation for Turkey in Washington. So there's still a lot of influence. That said, the influence is in decline, and if you noticed yesterday, the White House issued a strong condemnation of the Erdogan government, I believe for the first time, because of the Erdogan government's crackdown on Twitter and social media. Likewise, about a month ago, a bipartisan group of 80 senior policymakers, former ambassadors, signed a letter urging President Obama to change his policy towards Turkey. The important thing about this letter is it wasn't simply signed by Republicans or by Democrats. It was signed by both, and former American ambassadors who used to be very supportive of the AKP also signed this letter. It's an indication that Turkey and American policy is changing rapidly, and that creates an opportunity for Kurds and specifically for Rojava.
Alongside with Turkey and US, the KDP, the Kurdistan Democratic Party, is also antagonizing Kurds on many ways. According to you, who is behind KDP's acts?
Well, the KDP, every action in the KDP is really in the control of Masoud Barzani. Unfortunately, Masoud Barzani only uses Kurdish nationalism as a lever for politics. If he really were a Kurdish nationalist, he wouldn't have invited Saddam Hussein into Erbil in 1996. What Masoud Barzani cares about is money and power. And unfortunately, in Rojava, it creates an alternative to the KDP. And make no mistake, people are upset living under the KDP because it's less about freedom and more about tribalism. If we look at the broad picture, Abdullah Öcalan is most popular among Kurds in Turkey, and Erdogan confirmed this when he went into negotiations with Abdullah Öcalan. Öcalan is most popular among the Kurds in Syria. Öcalan is most popular among the Kurds in Iran, and he's very popular among the Kurds in Sulaymaniyah and Halabja. Basically, Masoud Barzani knows that if Kurds have freedom, he in effect is going to be the mayor of Barzan or perhaps the governor of Erbil, while Abdullah Öcalan is going to be the leader of Kurdistan.
At the end, what are your expectations of the future of Syria? Will Syria become effectively a country of cantons?
Well, before I answer that question, I do just want to wish your audience a happy Nowruz, because I haven't done that yet. But in answer to your question, Syria already is a country of cantons. The only thing that has been done in Rojava is to install a functioning government inside those cantons. But the violence in Syria hasn't been random. It's been ethnic and sectarian cleansing on the part of Bashar al-Assad and al-Qaeda. And therefore, whatever happens in the future of Syria, you're going to see a Syria that's as different from pre-war Syria as Bosnia was from pre-war Yugoslavia.
Michael Rubin, a resident scholar at American Enterprise Institute, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.